On June 28th, just after midnight, the Stonewall riots in New York City began, marking the start of the modern gay rights movement in the U.S. Police raided the Stonewall Inn, a popular gay club, for serving liquor without a license, when things turned violent as patrons and local sympathizers began to riot, throwing bottles at police. Order was restored in the early morning hours, but the event was followed by days of demonstrations and would eventually lead to the first Gay Pride Parade, and the month of June being designated Pride Month. On July 16th, Apollo 11 astronauts Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins lifted off from Cape Kennedy in Florida, headed towards the moon. The mission set by President John F. Kennedy to perform a crewed lunar landing before the decade was out was fulfilled on July 20th. Armstrong and Aldrin were the first men to ever walk on the moon. They spent more than 21 hours on the lunar surface, deploying scientific experiments and gathering samples before returning to the orbiting command module. As NASA completed their mission, 20% of the world's population watched in amazement, as Americans had officially won the space race. On July 19th, Senator Ted Kennedy drove his car off a bridge in a tidal pond after leaving a party on Chappaquiddick Island in Massachusetts. His passenger, Mary Jo Kopechne, was left in the car while Kennedy escaped, but he doesn't report the accident until the next day. The mystery surrounding the incident would leave Kopechne's family without answers and also derail Kennedy's presidential ambitions. On August 9th, members of the Manson family cult invaded the home of actress Sharon Tate in Los Angeles. The followers killed Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, and her friends, which included the Folgers coffee heiress Abigail Folger. The very next day, they would go on to commit another series of murders at the home of Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. From August 15th to the 18th, the Woodstock Music Festival was held on a dairy farm in Bethel, New York, which was 40 miles southwest of the town of Woodstock. The festival attracted over 400,000 people and featured some of the top musicians of the time, including Joan Baez, Janis Joplin, Jefferson Airplane, Joe Cocker, and Jimi Hendrix. On August 21st, the first Gap clothing store opened on Ocean Avenue in San Francisco. Don and Doris Fisher founded the store to make it easier to find a great pair of jeans. On September 23rd, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, starring Paul Newman and Robert Redford, premiered in New Haven, Connecticut. Based loosely on fact, the film tells the story of Wild West outlaws Robert Leroy Parker, known as Butch Cassidy, and Harry Longabaugh, the Sundance Kid, who were on the run after a string of train robberies. The film would go on to win 4 Academy Awards, including Best Song for Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. On September 26th, The Brady Bunch, created by Sherwood Schwartz, premiered on ABC, introducing the blended family and their cheerful housekeeper to the world. The show, which focused primarily on issues relating to the Brady kids, would become an icon of American pop culture. November 10th brought us the very first episode of Sesame Street. The show, which taught us the alphabet and how to count, would go on to become the most widely viewed children's program in the world. On December 1st, the Vietnam Draft Lottery was held. This would be the first since World War II, with September 14th being the first day selected, meaning that those born on that day from 1944 to 1951 would be drafted into the war. Finally, to finish out the year, on December 12th, the Jackson 5 released their debut album called Diana Ross Presents The Jackson 5. The album was released by Motown Records and made Michael Jackson and his older brothers pop superstars within months of the release. On January 25th, the movie MASH, directed by Robert Altman, was released. It starred Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould, and was a massive success, giving birth to the long-running TV show of the same name years later. January 27th brought us a new movie rating system, modifying the M for mature to PG, which stood for parental guidance. This was done mainly due to the confusing nature of the term mature audiences. On February 13th, which happened to be Friday the 13th, Black Sabbath's self-titled debut album was released. Although it wasn't released in the US until June, this album is often regarded as the first true heavy metal album and established heavy metal as a music genre. On April 1st, the U.S. Census Bureau released new population figures for the United States. The population at the time was nearly 209 million people, with California becoming the most populous state, over New York for the first time. Only 3 states had their populations go down: North Dakota, South Dakota, and West Virginia, which had the most. On April 13th, the crew aboard Apollo 13, bound for the moon, experienced an oxygen tank explosion that forced them to abandon the mission. The words, "Houston, we have a problem," would go on to become a common phrase anytime something went wrong. But NASA really had a problem on their hands. For 4 days, the astronauts and mission control solved logistical problems in stabilizing the spacecraft and its air supply, and provided enough energy to the damaged fuel cells to allow for a successful re-entry. On April 17th, the astronauts splashed down in the Pacific Ocean as the world watched. Earth Day was first observed on April 22nd, when an estimated 20 million people nationwide attended the inaugural events. By the end of the year, the Nixon administration would also establish the Environmental Protection Agency and pass the Clean Air Act. During the Kentucky Derby held on May 2nd, Diane Crump became the first woman to jockey a horse in the Derby. Crump rode a horse named Fathom and finished the race 15th in a 17-horse field. On May 4th, at Kent State University in Ohio, 28 National Guardsmen fired their weapons at a group of anti-war demonstrators, killing 4 students, wounding 8, and permanently paralyzing another. The tragedy was a watershed moment for the nation, divided by the conflict in Vietnam, and further galvanized the anti-war movement. On June 11th, Anna Mae Hayes and Elizabeth Hosington were among the first women to be made generals in the U.S. Army. The ceremony was held at the Pentagon, where both had their Brigadier General star pinned on their uniform.